Up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Bitcoin and Markets. My name is Ansel Lindner. Today is a Freeform Friday, so I just picked out a few headlines to read through. Of course, we have the ongoing Binance, Coinbase, Altcoin, Whining fest that we are experiencing. We're going to go through a few things. Rumor turned out to possibly be true. Then there is a Mt. Gox. If you have been here since 2013, you'll know the whole drama. Well, you probably heard about the drama even if you've come in after that. But it looks like they may have caught the Mt. Gox hackers, which is interesting. And then we have a few other tweets to go over, a few other stories, a macro story at the end that talking about the UK and the US and the future of like geopolitics and the global economy. So that will be interesting to read through as well. So welcome. Check out bitcoinandmarkets.com. That's my website that you can find everything that I put out. Let me bring that up here. Where is it? There we go. Bitcoinandmarkets.com. You can sign up to be a member. I'm working on another article right now. It's called Affinity Fraud, and it's talking about how all of the different types of scams in altcoins, they all exist under a overarching fraud, and that is the affinity fraud. So marketing, pretending to be like Bitcoin and marketing it to people that have heard about Bitcoin but don't quite understand it, walking through that process and how it exactly works and why it will eventually, it won't ever go away 100%, because no types of scams go away 100%. I mean, there's still, the MLM scams everywhere. There's still Ponzi schemes everywhere, but it won't be seen as a part of Bitcoin, or Bitcoin won't be seen as part of that group. And I call it a category error, putting Bitcoin in to a larger category. But anyway, that I'm working on. It should be done in maybe this weekend. Members will get first access to all of my new writings, and then it will be made public probably on Monday. Also on bitcoinmarkets.com, you can support the show, get this Market Pro you see up here. This is for my professional tier. It's a bunch of charts and everything that goes through Bitcoin's technical analysis, fundamental analysis, how it fits in with global macro. So I include a lot of macro analysis as well. I even did a post on the coming oil glut and why I think we'll see a repeat of the 1980s oil glut right now. So anyway, other than that, I wanted to give a shout out to the Old City Bitcoiners. They're in St. Augustine, Florida. I went to the meetup last night. Great group of guys. It was kind of exciting. There was a few new people that showed up, and one guy was hawking ordinals, and so we got a chance to disabuse him of those false notions about ordinals. But anyway, great group of guys. Hope to visit more often to the St. Augustine meetup. But anyway, okay, let's get on to the charts real quick. This is the daily Bitcoin chart. You can see we're still struggling with this 50-day moving average. And once again, let me measure out how long we have been at this level. So we are on day 84 of being roughly in this range where we are trying to break out of the 28, say, to $30,000 range. And we will see. I made a bet with CK on yesterday's FedWatch, saying that when he comes, because he's going to be going out of town, he's actually going to Norway for the Oslo thing. There's some Bitcoin thing going on in Oslo. And so he's going to be hooking up with Hodlnaut and some other people. I know at least one of you is on the server on my Telegram is from Norway. So you might want to DM CK and see if you can meet up with him. But anyway, he's gone for 3 weeks. And he's like, okay, let's make a bet of what the price will be when I return. And I just said higher. I think we are set here to go a lot higher. If we look at this previous time we were consolidating, let's put it to like here. It was roughly 50. And there's just a lot of pressure. Also, going with the Old City Bitcoiners last night, we started talking about some of the dynamics with what's happening in the uh, altcoin world and how that is going to translate into Bitcoin with the halving. So I think that during the halving cycles, we have this disinflationary spiral. We have a uh, hype cycle, not just a monetary disinflation that is going to affect the market, but also the social hype cycle. And every halving we go through, it's another confirmation that Bitcoin works. And so that drives its own adoption. And in past cycles, we've had altcoins heavily taking the attention away from Bitcoin, acting as Bitcoin substitutes. Okay, even though they're scams. They're fraudulently sold scams. But they took a lot of energy out of Bitcoin, and we saw that big time after the last cycle. So after COVID crash, and we came up and had the halving, we should have got many of the chartists and people that have been around for a long time in Bitcoin, and we're expecting the cycles of the halvings to pretty much continue. They were expecting 100K, maybe even up to 200K on the price. But the altcoin scam side, leverage side of the house took over a lot of that and kept the Bitcoin price, I think, muted. Maybe had a faster rally and then muted the top of that blow off top for Bitcoin. You can see the top this last cycle was way different than the tops in previous cycles. So something was going on there. Anyway, this cycle, I think we are going to see a more concentration into Bitcoin, since all of these exchanges are being, the SEC is going after them. There things like Binance stopping withdrawals and everything. So we're going to go over that here in a second. So a lot of that energy that would have been dissipated into altcoins and in previous cycles has been dissipated into altcoins. I think that is going to be concentrated and focused into Bitcoin. So what does that mean? That means we could see a very violent upside move. And I think maybe I'm just bought into the narrative and that I'm too far in the rabbit hole to look at this objectively, but Bitcoin is the way it is. It is a periodic element. The world must adapt to it. It will diffuse, just like gas diffusing into an empty space. The Bitcoin will diffuse into the world, and so it might take longer than expected, but eventually we're going to have a violent repricing event, and I think that possibly will happen this time. We'll have to see. We'll have to see. There's still some uncertainty about how the government's going to treat Bitcoin, if they're going to welcome it. But we have all of these things going on in Bitcoin, from Jason Lowry and from the Bitcoin Policy Institute, talking about how this is a national security thing, that the U.S. must not necessarily adopt Bitcoin, but must consider it as a possible future national security interest. And so that, along with adding to the halving cycle and adding to the altcoins not being able to steal a lot of the value from this hype cycle, man, we could see this repricing event happen now. So that's a long way to say I bet CCAS would be much higher. Of course, I get into that more specifically on the Market Pro. I pick out a target for the end of the third quarter and for this whole entire cycle. But anyway, that's what I'll have to say about price, leading into price. Let's take a look at a couple other macro things. The dollar is hanging out around 103, 104. I think it's set up to go higher as well. If we take a look at the Chinese yuan, which I did not share with Telegram, but let's take a look at the Chinese yuan. It is devaluing quite quickly. Let me take off these moving averages. So on this chart, as it goes up, that means the dollar is strengthening versus the Chinese yuan. And you can see it's really, the Chinese yuan has really gone down in a few weeks. There's a lot of talk about China being in recession right now and the Chinese economy even possibly falling apart. I am not a consistent watcher of Steve Van Meter, but I do watch his stuff. And just yesterday, he had a video about a path to, political change in China, that their entire economic model is falling apart. And that's not good for communist regimes, right? And it does, you have to stretch your imagination a little bit, but it's not too hard to imagine the CCP losing control, possibly the China splitting into two countries or having some sort of insider revolution, and changing power from Xi, who is a hardcore Marxist-Leninist, to maybe someone a little bit more agreeable to the free market, like a Deng Xiaoping or something. But anyway, that's very interesting. So I do expect the dollar to, continue to strengthen. I haven't changed my opinion on that at all. How about oil? Oil is, let me bring back up the 50-day moving average because this is very interesting. So you can see it's still downward sloping, the 50-day moving average, but this has very vital in oil over the last couple of years. And we did bounce down from that after the most recent 1 million barrel per day cut. I saw another headline that the U.S. is looking at most likely going to do a deal with Iran, letting them release 100 million barrels a day or ship 100 million barrels per day for an agreement to lower their uranium enrichment program. So yeah, the allies, the alliances of the global financial system that has, we've become used to over the last 50 years, there's no reason that they won't change. Like if I were a betting man, which I kind of am being a Bitcoin investor, but if I were to bet about which country is going to dominate the Middle East in the next 100 years, it wouldn't be Saudi Arabia. It wouldn't be Dubai. Okay. It would be Iran, and Iran on the eastern side and Turkey on the western side of the Middle East. So if you're going to pick a side, pick an alliance member that is strong, you should pick Iran and not Saudi Arabia. So we don't want necessarily China aligning themselves with Iran. So that would make sense to break down those sanctions, break down those barriers, and start aligning the U.S. more with Iran. This is just all geopolitical positioning. It doesn't matter. Like Iran is less human rights abuser than Saudi Arabia. So why wouldn't we choose to do business with them? Anyway, so that is oil. And finally, let's do stocks. Open gapped higher today on the S&P 500. I don't know where this, I think that is showing the golden cross. Gapped higher again today. Again, the most hated rally in stock market history. We'll see next week. We have a ton of economic data coming out from CPI in the US, Fed policy decision. So a lot of stuff happening next week. We'll see what happens to the stock market after that. But overall, this rally in the stock market has survived all sorts of policy rate hikes, sorts of unemployment numbers, all sorts of CPI numbers. And I do expect CPI to continue in its downward trend. Powell knows that the CPI is going to continue in its downward trend. And so there's no harm in pausing other than perhaps some sort of confidence hit. Like the Fed doesn't have the balls to stick through with their policy. They're cutting too early. So you have to balance those things as a Federal Reserve chairman. But overall, it doesn't really matter. We have the economy. CPI is going to come down. The economy is going to do okay, but not great. Growing at 0 to 1%. That has been my prediction, and that is exactly what is happening. We're going to have a return to asset price inflation with stocks going higher, bond yields falling, and Bitcoin going up. So that is what we're in store for. I've been pretty much sticking with that line for 2-3 years since COVID. And yes, it went a little bit higher than I expected. Oil went a little bit higher than I expected. This war in Ukraine has lasted a little bit longer than I have expected. But overall, generally, everything is going as planned. Back to post GFC normal, into a deflationary pressure period where people are searching for monetary alternatives, and that is where Bitcoin comes in. That's where asset price inflation comes in. That's where all of these other things come in. So again, I'm directionally correct, and not very many people can say directionally correct for the last 3 years. Okay, that's it for the charts. Let's get into some of the Bitcoin news. So here's a story out of Cointelegraph. Of course, this is all over Twitter. Breaking: Binance US suspends USD deposits, warns of fiat withdrawal pause. Binance US said the moves are part of efforts to protect consumers and the platform amid extremely aggressive and intimidating tactics by the SEC. So Binance US has announced the suspension of United States dollar deposits and has notified its customers of an incoming pause to fiat USD withdrawal channels as early as June 13th. On June 9th, Binance USD announced that it was forced to take this action amid extremely aggressive and intimidating tactics from the SEC. The firm noted that in an effort to protect its customers and platform, it is suspending USD deposits. Furthermore, Binance US is, quote, notifying customers that our banking partners are preparing to pause fiat USD withdrawal channels as early as June 13th. All right. The company added that it plans to transition to a crypto-only exchange, but remains a one-to-one ratio, maintains a one-to-one ratio for customer assets. Now, this is concerning. It does seem like a coordinated effort. Obviously, the SEC has now sued them. The banks are starting to turn their back here on Binance. This is a dangerous situation. It's also a dangerous situation for Coinbase. The Bitcoin price has not really responded yet. So that means that this is not really that big of a surprise. Most people probably still on exchanges are those that are dependent on this kind of altcoin recycling, wash trading scam. There's a lot of big money involved there. And when will they figure out just switch to Bitcoin or Tether and get out? I think that'll happen sooner rather than later if these things are coming, fast and heavy. June 9th, June 13th. So anyway, let's continue. The notice also cautioned that any downtime in processing withdrawals going forward may be the result of elevated volumes and weekend bank closures. Oh boy, that's a red flag as well. Of course, they always blame slow withdrawals on the banking sector. Now, this does fit. I mean, it is logical, but it's a big red flag. It's a big red flag. I mean, what are you withdrawing through the banks? If you're withdrawing Bitcoin or you're withdrawing whatever, your altcoin, scam coins, why would it matter about weekend bank closures? Only if you're withdrawing USD, which there I do understand the concern. Trading, staking, deposits, and withdrawals in crypto remain fully operational, it confirmed. As a result of the SEC's ideological campaign against the American digital asset industry. Oh boy. So the SEC has an ideological campaign against digital assets. I mean, no, like, gosh, I said this yesterday on FedWatch. I hate to be the SEC apologist. I hate to put myself in the position of the statist, but in this particular case, the bad actor, the actively bad actor is Binance and Coinbase. The SEC is this monster that doesn't really have a mind of its own. And I know people will personify it, in the person of Gary Gensler. And he is chairman, just like they personify the Federal Reserve and the banking system in general in the person of the chairman of the Federal Reserve in Powell. But that's not entirely the case. Okay, this system has decades, almost 100 years, 90 years of inertia and reality built up behind it. And this Binance comes in and they obviously are wash trading, commingling funds, doing things that are, extremely dangerous, selling and trading unregistered securities, doing things specifically they know that is against the law, selling scams and hyping scams. In Coinbase's case, setting up whole educational systems around lies. Okay. So I'm not taking a pro SEC stance. I'm taking an anti-Binance and anti-Coinbase stance, an anti-fraud stance. And in this case, so is the SEC. So it might feel like I am defending them, but I'm not. So they don't have an ideological campaign against the American digital asset industry. First off, everything's a digital asset today. I mean, except maybe physical gold that you hold, your house, your car, like these physical assets. But when you're talking about shares, either private equity or public equity, bonds, all of these types of assets are all digital. And your cash, your dollars in the bank, as well as your Bitcoin. Everything is digital. These are all digital assets. Okay, Bitcoin is a unique digital asset, but this isn't an ideological campaign against digital assets. It's also not ideological because they don't have anything against, per se, crypto or altcoins or blockchain. They don't have anything ideological against that other than it's fraud. So yes, they have an ideological campaign against fraud. Is that a bad thing? I mean, you can debate whether it works or not, but which is more worthy of condemnation? Is it the fraudster or the people that are trying to stop the fraud, even if they're not successful, right? And now we can always get into a debate about whether it's a good faith effort on the SEC's part if they're trying to protect their own type of industry. But I don't think so, because I see that these things are horribly fraudulent. The only people that believe that the SEC might be having some bad faith stuff here are people that don't agree that the fraud is taking place. All right, let's continue with this. So Binance US and its banking partners have faced increasing challenges, it said. Those banking partners have signaled that their intent to sever fiat on-ramps to the exchange. US dollar deposits will be suspended as of June 9, and USD trading pairs will be delisted next week. However, it will continue to support Tether trading pairs. It stated that any USD left on the exchange might be converted into a stablecoin that can be withdrawn on chain. Binance delisted 8 Bitcoin pairs and 2 Binance USD pairs on June 8th, while noting that OTC trading portal paused. BTC traded at a premium on the US exchange in early May. Very interesting. I guess I didn't follow that BTC was trading at a premium since early May on Binance. The SEC issued an emergency order on June 6th to freeze the assets of Binance US. The following day, the firm reassured customers that assets remain safe, adding that the platform continues to be fully operational with deposits and withdrawals functioning as normal. And then the very next day saying they're not operating as normal. Okay, I just added that last part in there. So that's that. I'll have plenty of time to rant during this next story. So this one is from CoinDesk. Robinhood joins Coinbase in saying it tried to come in and register like the SEC wanted. The two companies' top lawyers testified in a House crypto hearing that they spent months trying to get the SEC to help them comply before being rebuffed. All right, this better be good here. With Coinbase and Binance accused of running illegal exchanges by the SEC, the latest industry testimony in the U.S. House of Representatives this week revealed that companies had desperately sought the agency's help to properly register, but were turned away. Now, this is a lie. Well, let me break this down. They desperately sought, okay, I think they did desperately seek it, and they desperately sought the agency's help to properly register. That's the lie. That's the lie. They did not seek to properly register, and we'll get into that here. The SEC Chair Gary Gensler has a go-to crypto invitation to the firms that are operating without the agency's approval and oversight, which he repeated so often it's become a messaging mantra. They just need to come in and register. Robinhood Markets chief compliance lawyer told lawmakers that the popular trading firm was trying to register as a special purpose broker for digital assets. Dan Gallinger, a former SEC commissioner who has spent a career in securities and corporate law, couldn't get the agency to guide Robinhood into crypto compliance, though he said the staff seemed to want to help. Quote, when Chair Gensler at the SEC in 2021 said, come in and register, we did, Gallagher said in his testimony. We went through a 16-month process with the SEC staff trying to register a special purpose broker dealer. And then we were pretty summarily told in March that that process was over and we would not see any fruits of that effort. His story echoes longstanding complaints from Coinbase, whose top lawyer was also present at the House Agricultural Committee, Committee on Tuesday, and is now facing an SEC lawsuit alleging his company offered unregistered securities and didn't get approval as an exchange. Quote, when Coinbase has attempted to do just that, to talk about how we could register as a broker-dealer or an alternative trading system, or even as a national securities exchange, after months and months of discussion, we're simply dismissed with no response or any counterproposal or ideas coming back from the SEC, said Paul Grewal, Coinbase chief legal officer. Okay, Grewal is a fraudster and a liar. That has been shown. I wish I shouldn't say that without having specific examples, but he promoted scams. He lied about scams. I know that for a fact, and played them off as legitimate, not securities when they obviously were. So let's continue with this. This is the punchline here. Gallagher said one of the regulator's final sticking points for Robinhood was the lack of registration and disclosures from issuers of tokens that trade on the platform. And Gallagher argued there's no way for his company to insist that outside issuers meet SEC demands. That is the punchline here, guys. So what he's admitting to here is not that the SEC is unwilling to register these people. It's that their business model is built on non-compliance. So the SEC was like, you need to get rid of these coins, these tokens that don't have proper disclosures, that are unregistered securities. And Robinhood and probably Coinbase and Binance and all these others were like, but we can't do that because that's all of them, except Bitcoin, which is a commodity, right? And so their business model is predicated on selling scams. It's not that the SEC wouldn't register them. It's that the SEC wouldn't register them while they're selling scams. Period. I wish Gary Gensler would just come out and say that. I mean, he's said that, he's talked around it a lot. But I don't know the rules, okay? I'm not a lawyer and all that, but he probably can't talk about ongoing court cases, talk about ongoing investigations and things like that, even though he would like to. And he's been clear enough to say, look, all of these things are securities. He's been saying that for years. All right, let's keep going with this. Senator Cynthia Lummis jumped into the debate with a tweet this week promoting her crypto bill. The SEC has failed to provide a path for digital asset exchanges to register. Okay, does she want, this is just misleading. Does she want a path for Nigerian print scams to register? Does she want a path for Ponzi schemes like the MMM scam? Does she want a path for them to register? Absolutely not, because they're fraud, they're scams. That's what these digital asset exchanges are. There should not be provided a way for them to register without clearing up their scams. I don't know why that's so hard to understand. And the danger with this, I mean, I like Lummis. I think she's a net positive. Okay. But this, first off, crypto bill, that's obviously maybe not her words, because at the conference she was very Bitcoin centric, but maybe that is also speaking to the audience. But a bill that would legitimate, is that the word? Legitimate all these scam tokens would be horribly very, very counterproductive. It would be bad for society. So I mean, she's supposedly on our team, and I do like her. Like I said, I think she's a net positive. But if their bills legitimate the digital asset exchanges, guys, it's going to be very, very bad for people in general. Maybe not Bitcoin, but it will set Bitcoin back. It'll set the country back, or it'll set humanity back if they make a law that says that these aren't scams when they literally are scams. They're Ponzi schemes, they're pyramid schemes. Okay, let's keep reading. The possible counterweight to this argument is the series of approvals of digital asset broker-dealers by the financial industry regulator FINRA, an industry-funded oversight arm created by the SEC. The brokerages, including Promethean Ember Capital, LLC, Bosonic Securities, and OTC Markets Group, are officially approved to trade crypto securities, a category of assets whose borders aren't yet well defined. Meanwhile, the companies trying to navigate the path as compliant crypto firms haven't yet demonstrated a fully formed business model. So, okay, they will, I guess, be allowed to trade crypto securities, but those crypto securities will have to be completely open and honest with their paperwork, right? Or at least as honest, much more honest than just letting them do willy-nilly, and letting the promoters set the standards. So this isn't a free market versus a statist argument, okay? This is letting the fraudsters set the standards or letting the SEC set the standards. There is no option here between letting honest actors set the standards. The government is just it's just a mafia, right? Well, what do you think the crypto asset exchanges owners are? And their investors. Last night at the Bitcoin meetup, I was saying, we don't know the pressure that Brian Armstrong is under, because yeah, he has the mafia in the SEC going after him, but he also has the mafia of the A16Z folks and all those billionaire investors. They're like a mafia too. So which mafia should be setting the standards? That's the question. You can't just say, let's have no standard setters, because that's not the options. The option is one mafia or the other. Which one do you want? All right, let's see if there's any more to this. That's it. That's it for this one, guys. Now let's go on to rumors looking like they are true. And this is from Bitcoin Magazine. BitGo announces preliminary deal to acquire Prime Trust custody firm. BitGo Holdings, Inc. has announced its intention to acquire Prime Core Technologies, Inc., the parent company of Prime Trust. According to a blog post by BitGo, the acquisition aims to bring business continuity, long-term stability, and regulated, secure services to Prime Trust clients. Prime Trust expressed excitement about the potential partnership. Jor, I guess is how you say that, Jor Law, Prime Trust interim CEO and president, said he believes that the combination of Prime Trust and Bitcoin will be a game changer for the industry, stating, quote, "No other company will have the breadth of product and services nor depth of experience that this combined company would have. We are excited to offer our world-class infrastructure within a broader ecosystem and revolutionize the future of crypto." All right, that shows why they're failing. Oh, he can't just say Bitcoin. But anyways, so this was a rumor just yesterday, and it turns out that I guess it's true. Just a few hours later, maybe the people spreading the rumor had inside information. I don't know. Next story. Looks like the Department of Justice might have caught these guys back several years ago. These are the hackers of Mt. Gox. Tweet from Bitcoin Meme Hub here. And the headline is, Russian nationals charged with hacking one cryptocurrency exchange and illicitly operating another. The Justice Department unsealed charges related to the 2011 hack of the cryptocurrency exchange Mt. Gox and the operation of the illicit cryptocurrency exchange BTCE. According to court documents, Alexei Babachenko, 43, and Alexander Werner, 29, both Russian nationals, are charged with conspiring to launder approximately 647,000 bitcoins from their hack of Mt. Gox. Belchenko is also charged with conspiring with Alexander Vinnik to operate BTCE from 2011 to 2017. So I guess that is kind of old news a little bit on that, but because I thought they caught the guys from BTCE already, but it looks like now they're alleging that they were the Mt. Gox hackers themselves. I had heard the theory that the Mt. Gox hackers were using BTCE to launder the Bitcoin, and this was an open secret, but not that it was the actual guys running BTCE. So that's very interesting development. All right, what else do we have? And last but not least, let's look at this tweet from Michael Nicoletos. He's a great follow on Twitter. I recommend following him if you are not. But this is getting back into some of the geopolitics and the macro. So here we go. I have been arguing for a while now that I'm not entirely certain that Brexit occurred in isolation. From the very beginning, after Brexit, I have maintained that the US and the UK would draw closer together. And in my opinion, the UK could potentially join NAFTA someday. That's very interesting. I, as well, don't think it happened in isolation. Brexit is a symptom of a growing populist wave around the world. Times were different 50 years ago. Many places in the world have caught up to certain standards of living and certain technological standards. There isn't as much need for the US to be the hegemon of the world, and so it is naturally receding back to its previous norm of being a non-interventionist, isolationist type power. This is going to have broad effects on the world. Now, Peter Zion and others who people know I don't agree with Peter Zion on much of his like day-to-day or his political analysis, but on the geography side, the geopolitical side, I think that his stuff is compelling, I should say, extremely compelling. So yeah, the UK and the US, the English-speaking world will most likely stick close together. We see things like the yellow vests, we see things like the Canadian truckers, we see things like Trump, we see things like Brexit. We even see things like Viktor Orban, conservative values pervading Polish, the Polish what society or whatever. In Sweden, the conservatives have taken back. They become the largest political party, right? The conservatives are growing in Germany. The conservatives have won in Italy with Meloni. There's a growing tide in Spain. Japan, the leadership in Japan has been very populist for the last 10 to 15 years. And of course, you have places like Russia that very nationalistic with Putin. So these ideas, anti-globalist ideas, nationalism and populism are on the rise everywhere in the world. So of course, Brexit is not isolated. The question is, what is the consequence of this? You can't stop this, okay? The globalists have already lost. The only question is exactly how do we go forward? A drowning man will pull down their rescuer, right? So we don't know exactly how the drowning man of globalism is going to react at the end. There could be some volatility going on here, but we do know that they're drowning, and we know that it will eventually go away. Maybe not completely, but it will go away as the reigning dogma of the age. Anyway, let's continue with this. 2 years ago, I wrote about why I believe that the AUKUS agreement and Brexit might be more interconnected than people realized. You can find the article here. Okay, today we have learned that Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden have announced a deal for transatlantic cooperation, solidifying the UK's position within the US administration's economic sphere and marking a renewal of ties after the turbulence of Brexit. Okay. During the unveiling of the Atlantic Declaration at a joint press conference with Biden at the White House, Sunak explicitly stated that the strengthened links were intended to enhance economic security in response to threats posed by China and Russia. It is evident that the United States and the UK are growing closer to each other. As Europe becomes more vocal against the US, I fear that the US may gradually distance itself from Europe and in a way, allow Russia to increase its influence over the continent. Okay, so this is very interesting because this is one thing I've said, the rise of populism and nationalism and kind of newer alliances. That populism in Northern Europe is something to be concerned about. So he said that he's concerned or he fears. I think that's probably a good feeling to have for Northern Europe, but it's going to be balanced by other European powers also getting stronger. It doesn't mean there's going to be another European war. Probably won't be another European war for 100 years, but there will eventually be another European war. How do we get from here to there? It's crazy for somebody to think there will never be another European war. So that you have to believe that there will be one. Now, how do we get there? See, my thinking offers a way to get there. Anyways, so yeah, I think that is the case. And the U.S. is, like I said, it's naturally a non-interventionist trading power. Remember, the U.S. had the largest economy before the 20th century. Back in the 1870s, I think, or 1890s, one of the two. They, in that era, the U.S. became the largest economy in the world. way before becoming the global reserve currency, way before World War I and World War II. The UK was still the largest like industrial power. Uh, they ruled. They had the largest navy. They were the biggest military and all of that. But the US had the largest economy. So the US will be fine without being global hegemon. The US will be fine without having the world reserve currency. That does not mean at all. It actually will unshackle the US from being the global hegemon. It's very expensive to be the policeman of the world. Very expensive. Let's unshackle those chains. Let's not forget that during both world wars, the US and Russia were allies. Russia knows how to navigate its relationship with the US, as it has been doing for over a century. What Russia fears most is its southeastern borders, which it realizes it cannot adequately defend against potential Chinese aggression. China lacks the resources it needs and heavily relies on imports. If the US and Russia were to reach an agreement, even if it's not public, China would face significant economic peril. It's China's system, economic system, is very precarious. It is very, very precarious. And yes, Russia and China are natural enemies. People, I think, kind of laugh me off when I say that. But they're land powers in Asia, guys. They're natural enemies. They've fought wars in recent, just let's see, when was that? Like the 1968 or 1969, something like that. They fought a war. It was a small border skirmish, but it was a war. And so they are natural enemies. I don't know. That's all I want to say about that one. So, guys, thanks for joining me. My name is Ansel Lindner. This is Bitcoin and Markets. I do these kind of live streams all the time. So follow me on Twitter at Ansel Lindner. Check out the YouTube channel, BTC Market Update. I'm on Rumble at Bitcoin and Markets, and Twitch, and all those other places. And of course, Telegram, t.me/Bitcoin and Markets. Thank you for joining me. Have a good weekend. See you later, guys.